everyone and welcome. In the previous video, we have learned how to create a category and a catalog item in ServiceNow. Previously, we have built this catalog item application access request and filled up some basic details for the catalog item. In this video, we will explore that what are the different types of variables in ServiceNow and, and we will also create a few of them. We'll also learn that how to configure the default value and use the ServiceNow out-of-the-box validation regex to validate the user input. So yes, we will create a form which look like this, in which there will be a requester information and an access details section. So let's get started. In the previous video, we have created a category, access and identity management, and under that category, we have created a catalog item application access request in which users can ask for any application access, modifying that access, or if they want to remove that access. In that catalog item, we have also looked at how we can fill up some basic details like short description, or some portal settings that helps us to enhance the look of the catalog item. So this was a basic catalog item that we have created. Now let's look at how we can add some questions into that catalog item. So going down in the related list of the catalog item, we can see that there are related list variables. So we know that variables are the questions that are asked from the user who is requesting that catalog item. So we will click on new and let's see that what are the different types of variables. So we can see that ServiceNow provides these many types of variable in the catalog item. So let's understand that one by one that what each type means. So some types are self-explanatory like attachment. That it means that when we want to add a variable of type attachment, that means the user want to attach any attachment. Then there is a break. So break simply means that adding a horizontal line in our catalog item. It is just used for formatting to make the service catalog look good. Then we have the checkbox. Checkbox means that if you want to enable or disable some values, like here we can see active, mandatory, read only. These are all types of a checkbox only. Then we have the container end, split, and start. So these are used to create a layout in which different variables are placed. We will also look into them then that how these can be used to make the catalog item look more good. Then we have the custom and custom with label. So these are used to add or insert a UI macro into our catalog item. Custom with label means that if we have inserted that UI macro and we want to give a name of that macro, then we can use custom with label. Next, we have some date types of variable in which we can select any date. If you want to select the date, if you want to select date time, if you want to add any duration, then we can use that. Next, we have email type of a field. It also comes with some out of the box validations. Next, we have the HTML in which we can insert any HTML type of a field. Next, we have the IP address in which right now it supports two types of IP address, IPv4 and IPv6. Next, so label are a type of a formatting element only which does not collect any input. It just shows a label of the form. Then we have the list collector. So list collector is used when we want to select multiple records from a table. So I'll show you that how list collector looks like. Let's maybe open this user table. Okay. And let's open able tutor record. And we can scroll down and under the roles, let's select on edit. So this is a type of a list collector. List collector creates an interface into the catalog item in which we can select multiple records. So like we can select multiple roles and then we can move it here. So this is an example of a list collector. We can cross this and let's see what are the other type. Then we have the lookup multiple choice and lookup select box. So these are similar in functionality, just the lookup multiple choice. In this, we use the radio buttons and the data is taken up from a different table. That's why we have used lookup. That means that we are taking the data from some other table. Similarly, lookup select box, it just creates a list of choices rather than creating the radio buttons. Then we have the masked. In the masked, we can, if we have any sensitive information, then we can use the mask type of a variable field. Next, there are multi-line text. So multi-line text is used when we want to insert multiple lines of text. Next, multiple choice. In this, the radio buttons are created, but these are all static choices. That means the data is not selected from any reference table. Next, the numerical scale. In this, we only have the radio buttons, which helps to select some numeric numbers. Next, there is a reference field. In reference, we can select any record or any data from some other field. Similarly, we have one other type of a field which is requested for. So requested for is it tells us that a particular catalog item is selected is requested for which user. So out of the box, it it auto-populates the currently logged in user. And in any catalog item, we can only use a single requested for type of a field. That means that we cannot create two variables of type requested for. Next, we have the rich text label. If we want to add a label, but in some formatted manner, then we can use rich text label. Select box creates a list of choices. Single line text, if we want to add any string data, then we can use single line text. Then UI pages to insert a new UI page into the service catalog. URL, if we want to add an URL. And then we have the white single line text. It just the white single line text spans across the whole form, so user can enter the data in a good manner. And then we have a yes no type of a field if you want to check that or not. So these are the types of the field, and there is a very good documentation which is there provided by ServiceNow. This is the documentation. So here we can see that what are the different types of catalog variables. If you want to also look into these different types of variable in depth, then I will add this the link of this documentation in the description. You can definitely check this out. So coming back to our variable. Into the form view, we can see that we also have an order in which we can list down that what are the order of different variables. That means in which order the question should appear. So the variable with least type of the order with least value of order are placed in the topmost. Then we have some checkbox like active, mandatory if this field is active or not, and mandatory if you want this particular variable to be mandatory or not, then we can select that. If you want to make it read only or if you want to make that variable hidden, then we can simply select these checkboxes. Next, we have a disable automatic slot fill based on the user context. That means if the user might have previously filled that catalog item, then he might have selected some value. Then shall we want that value should be used if the user, let's say, submit another request? Then we can check that if you want the automatic slot to be filled. Next, in in the variable, if we scroll down, we can see that there are various sections. So question simply means that what is exactly the question that needs to be asked from the user. Then next we have the conversational label. It overrides that how any AI or let's say LLM can rephrase that question. So we can override that if you want. So tooltip is used, let's say that whenever the user hover onto that particular question, like here we can see that it is used in doc type mode. So this is an example of a tooltip if you want some information to be displayed whenever the user hover over that variable. Then we can add our text here. Next we have the example text which shows the placeholder value that can be used for that variable. Next we have the annotation. So in the annotation, if we want the user to if we want to provide some extra information to the user so that he can understand that variable, then we can use as help text. We can select on this show help and add our help text here that helps the user to understand and to populate the correct answer into our variable. We can also keep it always expanded if we want the help text to be shown always. Then we have the type specification in which we can set the width of that particular variable. There are some out of the box validation regex also in which we can select that, let's say if you want to type of email, then we can choose this validation regex, and let's say if the user types something which is not in the email format, then it will show an error. So these are the different types of validation regex which are provided out of the box. We also have variable attributes if we want to, let's say, add any specific behavior or we want to add any restrictions, then we can use the variable attributes for that. In the next section, we have the default value. If we want to add the default value for that variable, then we can add the value here. Auto-populate, let's say if we are having a variable which is dependent on some other variable. An example would be, let's say we add a variable of category and there is another variable which is called subcategory. So subcategory is dependent on the value which we choose in category. So we can select the dependent question here, and based upon that dependent question we can show the options which are there. Next, we have the permission. If we want to restrict this variable to some specific roles only, then we can add our roles here. Next is the availability. Availability means that where we want to show this variable. If we want to show it everywhere, if we want to show in order guides or summaries, bundles, then we can enable and disable them here. So we can leave it as it is. Now let's create some variables for our catalog item application access request. So in the first one, let's create a requested for that for which user it is requested. So let's create a first variable of type requested for. We can select here requested for and let's give it an order of, let's say, 100, and we can ask our question here is requested for, and the name will auto populate. Rest we can leave it as it is, and let's just save it and see that how that it looks. Okay, it is created, and let's refresh it. So we can see that our requested for is here and it is by default the currently logged in user. So this is the functionality which is provided out of the box and we can use that. So rather than creating a reference field to the sys user table and then maybe writing the default value, we can simply use the requested for. So let's create a new variable email. So there are two options by which we can create an email. Either we can choose the type as single line text and we can use the type specification, and in the validation regex we can choose the email. So as to validate that user does not write any arbitrary data, he should he or she should use always type the email here. Or another better option is we can select the type as email. Okay, so it by default chooses the email format only, that the user should write the correct email. We can keep here as business email. And let's just save it. Oops, we forgot to add the order. We can also add the order. Let's keep it as 200. Okay, let's refresh our form. Now we can see that it is a type of an email. It also has an email icon next to it. We can, for now, let's just add any random value ABC, gibberish, and we can request it. So we will see that an error message pops up that the following field contain error, which is business email, and it is an invalid email address. So now the user cannot type any arbitrary value. They will always have to type a correct format of an email. Okay, let's create some other variables as well. Okay, select on new. Now let's create a new variable of number. So we can select the type a single line text and we can choose here order 300. And let's type here contact number, and for now let's just save it. We will go back onto our form and refresh it. So we can see a contact number is also added. Now here user can write any value, let's say A, B, C, D, E, and then if they click on submit, then that request would be submitted. But this is not what we want. So what we can use the out of the box regex to make the data specific in the numbers only. So we can choose here number and let's save it. Let's go back here and reload it. Now, if I add any value and if I just do here, then we can see an error message is shown, which is saying that not a number. So in this, user should always add any number. Now, so now in this, user can type any up to any length of number. It will not show any error or any message. So what we can do is in the annotation, we can add a help text and we can write add the contact number in 10 digits. So we can save it so that the user know that they have to write the 10-digit contact number. Okay, we can see add the contact number in 10 digits. So let's also create a new field now. If you want, then we can keep it to always expanded as well. If we save it and go back to our catalog item, we can see that this is always expanded. So it is up to our choice that if we want to keep it always expanded or not. Let's just disable it and let's create a new field of manager. Also, we can, if we want this contact number to be mandatory, then we can select this mandatory and it will make the variable as mandatory. So without it, if the user does not fill this contact number, this this request wouldn't get submitted. So we can refresh and check. We can also see that there is a section coming required information, contact number. And if I try to submit it, then it will be shown that it is incomplete. So we can choose it. Now let's go back to our catalog item and create a new variable. Okay, and now let's create a variable having the name, having the question as department. So the we can choose the type as reference, and now we can see that there are two things which are marked as mandatory. First one in the question, which is the name, and then in the type specification, we can see that another field is being shown, which is the reference. So we also have, whenever we select this type of reference, we also have to populate this field reference. Based on our choice, based on the type of the variable, different fields also get displayed. Now let's go back and we can type here department. The name would be auto-populated. And let's also write a tooltip here, department of the user. And we can leave the annotations. In the reference, let's select the CMN department. It is the department table which we can use. Also, we can see that there are some other fields which is use reference qualifier. In the simple reference qualifier, we can add any reference qualifier conditions. So in that case, only the matching condition records would be displayed that the user can choose. Or if we also want to add any dynamic, then we will have to create a dynamic reference qualifier and then we can select. Similarly, in the advanced, we can simply type some JavaScript here using the JavaScript, and all the records which matches that particular JavaScript will be shown here in the reference field. So for now we can keep it as simple, and let's just save it. Again forgot to add the variable order, so let's also keep it as 400. Okay, and save it. Okay, let's go back onto our form, refresh it, and now we can see that there is a department selected. Now the user can select any department. What if we want to make it dynamic? We want to auto-populate it. So in that case, we can use this default value. And under the default value, we can write a JavaScript here. So let's look at what we can write. We can write a JavaScript here. And in this JavaScript, we can use gs.getUser. So by this method, we get all the information about this user, and we can use get department ID. Now let's just save this record and let's go back to our application. Let's wait for it to get saved. Okay, now let's refresh it. So we can see that the department has been auto-populated. We can also check the department of the user. Let's go back to the sys user table and see the department. So yes, this user is having the department of finance. So that means it is correct. We can also, as it is being auto-populated, so we can keep it as read only. So let's keep it as read only. Okay. So this is how we can use, so this is how we can use the default value to auto-populate the department of the currently logged in user. Okay. And if we want, we can also uncheck this to maybe change the department. Right now, we can see that the form does not looks very good. It is in a single column layout, and all the variables are next to each other. So now let's also learn about new variables: container type, container start, end, and split. So let's go back and we can create a new variable of container. So container, as the name suggests, it is basically a container wherein we can put in all our variables, and it simply it helps to lay out those variables. So what we can do is we can also see that the ordering of all these variables are 100, 200, 300, and 400. So we will create a container start of maybe let's say 50 and a container end of 450. So let's create them. Let's quickly create a container start, and we can keep it order of 50. And also if you want to display the title of that container start, then we can check this. So let's check it and give the question name such as the requester information. Okay, and the name will be auto populated, and we also don't want to fill up in these things, we can skip it. So we can now simply save it. In the form we can see now there is a requester information label here. Okay, let's also create a container and go back, and here let's select as container end, and let's keep the order as 450. So here you guys might have a question that then in that case what is the use of the container split? So as the name suggests, container split will be used to split the variables into the left and the right column format. So what we can do is we can also create another variable container split. Let's open this catalog. So what we will do is we will create a container split with let's say a value of 250. So all the variables which have a value less than 250 will be placed on the left hand side, and all the variables which are having the value greater than 250 will be placed on the right hand side. So let's create a new variable of container split. Container split and order is 250. Okay, we can submit it and now refresh our form. So now you can see that it is in a two column layout format. So this is the use of the container start, split and end. It helps us to create a layout of the variables. Okay. And also I don't like this add attachment, so we can remove it. Under the portal setting, we can select hide attachment and let's save it. Okay. So now we have seen that how we can create the variables for requested for, contact number, email, and department, and how we can populate the data dynamically onto them. Let's also see some other variable types. So maybe we can now create a new container. So first I'll create a new container. Let's say 500 and container start. and I will name it as access details. Okay, and we can save it. Now, in this access detail container, we should have some information regarding the access, what type of access the user is requiring, why he is requiring. So let's create the variables accordingly. Now we will create a new variable of type select box having the name as access type. And in that select box, then we will see how we can give the different choices. So let's keep the ordering as 600 and we can select it as select box. Let's also keep it as mandatory and the question being the access type. Once we save this variable, we will see a related list of question choices and herein we can add all our choices for that particular variable. Let's refresh the form to see if there are any choices available or not. Okay, and now you can see that this variable is in a single column layout because there is no split added. We can see that there is no match found because there is no access type defined right now. So let's create few choices. So for our, we can type in our, let's say, first one being the new access and value, and in the value we can type new access and we can save it. Also, if you want to add any price, then we can also add it over here. Submit it, and now we'll also create few other values as well. Let's go back. So the order is now 200 and we will add modify access, modify access. So this value is the backend name of this choice modify access. Let's also save it. Let's go back and let's create a last choice having the remove access. Okay. We can also see that the question type is selected as the access type. Let's go back again. Now in this variable we are having three question choices. Refresh this form. Now we can see that under the access type there are three choices which are available. New access, modify access and remove access. So as there was no none type, by default the first one is selected as the access type, default access type. If we want to add a none, we can add it, we can select it over here. So under the type specification, if we want to include none, then we can add that. So here a none has been added. Okay. So now let's go back. For our case, we don't want this none value. And also if we want to select the choices, the here we have created the static choices. But if we want the choice to be selected from particular table, then we can select the choice from here as well. We can select the table and we can select the field in which choices are there. Okay, so let's keep it as it is. And if you also, let's say I don't want the new access to be kept as default, I want the modify access to be kept as default. So what I can do is I can, let's first uncheck this and we can save it. Okay, and if we refresh it, we'll see that new access selected as the default. What if we want that modify access should be chosen as default? So what we can do, in the default value, we can copy this modify access and we can simply paste it over here. So by default, our modify access will be selected as the default value. Let's go back and we can see the modify access is selected as the default value. So this is how you can also have a default value for your choices. I will skip it because I want the new access to be the default value always. Okay, open this catalog item and let's create few other variables as well. Let's also create a date type of a variable. So we can create select new and now let's select a date type of a variable. We can select the type as date and let's say the order is 700 and we can keep the question as need by date. So by when do we need this access? And let's first save it now and go back to our form, refresh it. So we can see that in need by date, a date type is added and in this we can select by when do we want this application. Let's say if I want to auto-populate it, so what I can do is, let's say if I want to auto-populate it to the today's date. So what I can do in again in the default value, I can type JavaScript gs.now. So this is a method by which we can auto-populate the date. Save it and let's refresh it. Now we can see that the today's date is selected. So this is how we can set the default value for the date as well. Let's create another variable as well. Few simple variables. So let's say in any ideal scenario, whenever a user is asking for a access, a business justification is asked. That means that why the user need the access for the particular application. So we can keep as a single line text and 800 and we can write the simple as business justification that why do we require this and let's also keep it as mandatory. Okay, and also let's create a last variable. Can go back then new. Okay, so let's maybe check the CS now. Let's say if I keep it as 900 and let's check the question as emergency request, that whether this is an emergency request or not. Okay, so I can choose it as here, and if we want to include none, we can select it over here. If we want to specify a default value, then we can also select that. I can save it and then check over here. So our business justification is added and our emergency request is also added. And by default, it is selected as yes. If we want it to be by default selected as no, so we can go to the default value and type in here as no. It is as simple as that. And let's just refresh it. So now the emergency request is by default selected as no. Okay. If you want, then we can also add a split here, which will basically divide the variables in the left and the right. But I think that is fine. So what we can do is we can keep it here and we can just create a container in now. Let's create a last variable, container end. Container end, and let's keep the order as 950. Okay. So that is it for this video. We have looked at how we can create different variable, how we can populate the data dynamically in our variables, how we can use the out-of-the-box validation regex to validate any particular field, how we can also use the help text and different other things as well. So that is it. And if you guys have any doubt, then you can ask us in the comment section down below. So till then, see you in the next one.